The last few days around our farmhouse have been rainy, oozy, a little bit cooler, which was a nice break from the July and August heat that we've been having. A lot of towns near us actually had historic levels of rain. They called it a 1,000-year flood. So it's been raining like crazy. It's rainy today. And so I'm gonna spend some time in the kitchen sharing with you some summer breakfast ideas and inspiration. I like to just over time collect ideas. I throw them in my notes and then eventually I make videos like this sharing with you things that I've been learning and trying in my own kitchen for my own family. So this video actually came about because the other night, it was before my bedtime, the kids were already in bed and I had a nice, quiet, clean kitchen all to myself. And so I started soaking stuff, which is what I typically do in a situation when I have a little time and a quiet kitchen. So I got going some sourdough English muffin dough. I got going my sourdough cinnamon rolls. I thought anytime I get something going, we have options. So I don't necessarily need a plan, but if my starter is fed and ready to go, I just start whipping stuff up. So I made up a sourdough cinnamon roll dough, and I actually got to thinking I should take something seasonal like berries and create more of a sweet roll with it and then share a breakfast video for YouTube. So that's how this came about. So for the first day, I did just that. So to make the dough the night before, I added a half a cup of starter, a half a cup of water, 4 cups of flour, a half a cup of coconut oil, a half a cup of honey, and 2 eggs, and kneaded that until it was nice and stretchy. And then the next day, I added in a teaspoon each of baking soda, baking powder, and a half a teaspoon of salt. For the filling, I took blueberries, which we didn't have any fresh, but we definitely could have gotten them if we would have gone over to the orchard nearby and gone picking. You can use blackberries, you could do peaches since those are in season, even apples as the fall comes on here. That would be a really delicious thing to put into a cinnamon roll. Ooh, I need to do that actually. That's gonna be coming up. So I put a whole bag of frozen blueberries and some sweetener to taste. You could do honey, you could do syrup, you could do regular sugar. And then I put a little bit of water in the pot, put the lid on, and just cooked it down until everything was liquidy. Then I added a little bit of einkorn flour to thicken it, took the lid off, allowed it to evaporate a bit. I was basically just going for a nice, like not jam, but a nice sauce that wouldn't spill out too badly was the goal. I sweetened it to taste, not really following any kind of recipe here. For the icing, I did cream cheese, fresh cream, and date syrup, and a little bit of vanilla, and mix that all together in my mixer. Actually, I forget, I make this recipe so often, but I still tend to forget that you have to use an immersion blender to really bring it together. So I do this all the time. I put it into my mixer right after I clean it for my cinnamon roll dough, start mixing, and then remember, oh yeah, you have to use the immersion blender. So you can either put it into a pot and use an immersion blender or a bowl, whatever you prefer. The immersion blender brings it together beautifully. After baking the rolls, I just spread it on top and dusted it with a little bit of powdered sugar, and my family was very pleased with me. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break from telling you about the summer meal ideas to share with you something that I had the opportunity to be a part of that I really want to share with you. So a few months ago, Josh from the Homesteading Family and his whole team came to our home to film an entire lesson course class on fermenting vegetables with me. So I stood here in the kitchen and I shared very detailed step-by-step instructions on how to ferment vegetables, the issues that could happen whenever you're fermenting vegetables, that maybe you're not sure, why certain things went wrong, how to troubleshoot, the entire process for a lot of different vegetables, how we use them in our own kitchen with our own family. And this is all part of something called the School of Traditional Skills. So this is something that they're launching that is going to basically deep dive into so many different topics that as someone who is trying to become more self-sufficient, maybe start working on homesteading or cooking from scratch or just eating healthier, that could really help you. Now there's going to be a live summit in September. I'm going to be teaching a live class on fermenting vegetables, and this is all free. So this summit is free. You can check it out, you can sign up and learn from so many different creators that you probably also know who will be sharing their expertise. After this, I'm gonna share a couple quick preview clips of the class that they shot here in our farmhouse. You can tell just how professionally it's done, just to give you a taste of what the School of Traditional Skills will be about. I also want to invite you to the summit, so make sure to head to bit.ly/farmhouse STS summit to join me live for free to answer questions about fermenting foods, and also so many other creators sharing in things that they're passionate about that you can learn from and take back a lot of these traditional skills in your own kitchen. I've learned the art of many types of ferments over the years, from sourdough to water kefir, kombucha, and everything in between. And lacto-fermenting vegetables is still the most simple, least involved skill of all. Once you complete the lessons, you'll have options for simple ferments to serve with every meal. Not only is this humble method of fermenting veggies with only salt healthy, but it also works for short-term food preservation. I could serve them with for my family, and becoming more comfortable with them is what really has helped to expand the skill. For the next idea, I am using my sourdough English muffin dough, which I told you I also got going the night before. There's a couple ways to make this. You can use milk, you can use water, you can use baking soda for a quick rise, or after doing the first initial rise, you can divide them and cut them out with a biscuit cutter and then allow them to rise again. I like to do this really fast and not have to think too far ahead, so I'll explain to you how I did it given that. So the night before, I mixed together 2.5 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of starter, and a cup of water. The next day I had a bubbly wet dough. I add in a teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and about a tablespoon of sweetener. You could also add that in the night before. Because I add the baking soda, this makes it to where I can cook them right away as opposed to waiting for another rise, and they still get really big and fluffy. So I just preheat my cast iron skillet and then just drop them on and reduce the heat to low, put a lid on, and allow them to rise and cook all the way through. Daughter who loves making poached eggs. To her, that is fancy. And so every once in a while, we like to top our English muffins with poached eggs. Today we took it a step further, collected herbs from our herb garden since it is summer, and this is a summer-inspired breakfast cook with me. And I melted some butter, added the herbs, threw it in the freezer so that it would set up a little bit, and then worked on the other aspects of the meal before adding on the herb butter. So I like to cut my English muffins in half and toast them on the insides. Obviously totally optional. I also had some homemade mozzarella cheese in the refrigerator from our raw milk, which I have been loving making lately. It's so easy that now I'm just making it all the time. I actually have a recipe over on my blog, Farmhouse on Boone. So if you're looking for how to make mozzarella, it's there. There's also a YouTube video. So I topped my open-faced English muffins with herb butter, a little bit of shredded cheese, and then poached eggs. I added a little bit of apple cider vinegar to my egg poaching water because it helps the whites to stay together and to have that nice poached egg shape. What I'm looking for here is the white to be cooked, but a nice soft yolk to run out over the English muffin. It's so tasty. For the next idea, I am sharing a peaches and cream oatmeal. It is peach season. We have lots of peaches. We don't have peaches yet on our homestead, but we have a nearby peach orchard that does a U-pick. And so we can get peaches in abundance. I only had steel cut oatmeal on hand, which is totally fine. You can just do this in steel cut, but I also have the new Oatmeal flaker, which allows you to take oat groats and make your own fresh oatmeal. You can also do steel cut oatmeal, just to have a little bit of a different shape because it's starting with a smaller beginning grain. You can also throw in wheat berries or einkorn. So I did a mixture of steel cut oats and einkorn berries, and then I got it soaking to remove a lot of the phytic acid. So if you're unfamiliar with this concept, basically you introduce something acidic like lemon juice or vinegar or yogurt or kefir. The idea is that something acidic will neutralize the anti-nutrients that are bound up in grains. So the thing that makes it very difficult to digest, you will help that process along by introducing something acidic. So for every cup of the flaked grains, I did a cup of milk, and then I also just did probably about a quarter cup to a half cup. I just eyeballed it of homemade kefir and then allowed that to sit at room temperature. To that, I added several diced and peeled peaches, sweetener to taste, and a hefty amount of cream from our dairy cow. When we went on vacation recently, we picked up some oatmeal packets so we could make like a really easy breakfast in the Airbnb in the microwave, and my kids all just commented on how delicious they thought the oatmeal was. And I told them that's because there's so much sweetener in it. So if you ever feel like you need to like transition your kids into liking oatmeal, just adding in a bit more sweetener so you can transition away from the packets, but then maybe like dial it back over time. It's really helpful because who doesn't love that maple and brown sugar oatmeal from the little packets? I know I loved that when I was a kid. So for this particular oatmeal, I am doing maple syrup and brown sugar, trying not to add as much as they did in those packets, but still make it really delicious. Also a bit of vanilla and cinnamon goes a really long way to making this a delicious summer breakfast. All right, the last one on my list is something I've been wanting to try for a while. That is a fig and pig quiche. I love making fig and pig pizza, fig and pig sandwiches. So with a sandwich, I take sourdough bread, I use a fig spread, like a fig jam, and then bacon, and then maybe some cheese or ham, That combination of fig and pork is so good in all varieties of foods. So my husband the other day, knowing that I love this combination of food, was looking through a magazine and he found a recipe for a fig and pig quiche. He sent me the photo. I don't know what recipe book or what magazine it was from, but I'm going to attempt to make it based on this one little photo that he sent me. So first I'm gonna make a crust. I don't really need to follow the recipe in the magazine because we have our own way of making a pie crust. If you're looking for that recipe, I have the einkorn pie crust recipe over on my blog. This is our favorite one because since we're not long fermenting the grains, it's nice to use something like einkorn, which is an ancient grain, which is easier to digest. Next, whisk 5 eggs, a tablespoon of flour, a couple cloves of garlic, and a little onion powder, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and a cup of whole milk. This will be the quiche base. Now the recipe on here calls for some different kinds of cheeses and spices. I'm just kind of adapting this for our family and what we have on hand. So to the crust, add a cup of shredded cheese. I'm just going to be using cheddar here, and then about a 1/4 cup of quartered figs. Next, add the egg and milk mixture and bake until a film has formed on top. The eggs below won't be baked, but the top will have a little bit of a structure on top. So to that, add bacon, just as many slices as will fit on top. Return it to the oven until the bacon is crispy and the eggs are set, another 25 or 30 minutes. Now, I, of course, double recipes like this whenever I'm making it for my larger family. This probably would serve about 4 or 5 people if I had to guess. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed these summer breakfast ideas. I love using fresh ingredients like eggs, which are in such abundance right now because the days are so long. Fresh fruits, fresh herbs, fresh tomatoes. It's a really beautiful time to be in the kitchen. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you are brand new to my channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe. I make new videos every week on food from scratch, natural living, and a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.